All right, in this video, we're going to walk through, we can continue basically talking through how to update and share our code that's on our local repository with our remote repository. So in the previous video, we essentially connected our local repository to a repository that we created on GitHub. That repository that we created on GitHub was called, let's see here, let's bring it back up. It was called JS Review Repo. And we ran some commands here that would allow us to push up and see that we can push up this code that you see here. What I want to do is take this a step further and run through a few more commands. And so here are the commands that I want to do a review over, but then also talk about a few more of the commands such as the Git Pull and then the Git Push. And you'll see my workflow in terms of how I'm going to keep the two repositories in sync. All right, so let's go and take a look at our local repository here. What I want to do now is just I want to show that we are connected to a remote repository. If you want to check to make sure that you're connected to a remote repository, that's hosted on GitHub, you can run a command called git remote, and that will show you that, hey, there's this repository is connected to a repository and the alias is called origin. And so if we were connected to multiple repositories, it would list all the various aliases of those remote repositories. Real quick, let's go ahead and make a quick change here. We're gonna let's go ahead and add a new string here. We say console.log, and at this point we'll do a continue with the string interpolation, and we're gonna say we add a new variable as well. So we'll just do a comma here, and we'll just say meet and time, subject, days of week. Let's just say length, semester length. And then we'll set semester length. So we'll just declare the variable, and we'll say semester length to 16 weeks. So 16. At this point, we're just going to put some text here. The semester length is, and then we just do the symbol. And we'll just say semester length. Right, so a really basic addition that goes over declaring initializing variables and then obviously output into the console. Like I said, that's not the point of this video here. It's out of the scope, but more so just to say that we're going to make a change. We're going to save that change, and then here we're going to run through the basic workflow. So we're going to say git status. So we're going to do a git add. We do a git commit. We'll just do a short adding variable and console output to test.js. And then here, all right, when we say git status, you'll see that our branch is clean, but there's some new information that's telling us here. Right? It says your branch is ahead of origin master by 1 commit. And so, like I said, the idea here is that we want to do our best to try to make sure that our local and our cloud repository or our remote repository are in sync. And so if you remember, I showed you this diagram in the previous video. Currently, our local repository is 1 commit above our remote repository. Reason being is because we made a commit to basically add a variable and some console output. And so what we want to do here is now make sure that both of these repositories are identical, and that we want to make sure we push up the changes to our remote repository. So let's go ahead and actually run the command to do that here. And you'll see that the command here from our cheat sheet is going to be a command called git push. And it says you can choose the alias that you want to push to. In this case, our alias is named origin, and then the branch, and we're going to push to the master branch. So let's jump back to our editor, and everything is clean on our master branch. We're just 1 commit ahead. And so we want to do a git push, and it'll also help you here. It'll say use git push to publish your local commits. And where are you publishing it to? You're publishing it to your remote branch on GitHub. So we'll say git push. We're going to do the alias, origin, and the branch name. In this case, we only have 1 branch name, which is master. And so we press enter, and that is getting pushed up to our remote repository. So that's done. And if we go back to our remote repository, which is here, you'll see that test.js, it doesn't have those changes yet, but I'm sorry, it does have those changes because I refreshed, right, the browser. So here's the where I declared the variable semester length. Here's where I initialize it, and then here's the output, right? Now we push it up to the master. If we wanted to, we can actually create a new branch here and pull it down, create a new branch here so that our remote have a branch. But we'll talk about that in just a second here. So that's how we would actually push up our changes from the local to the remote branch. But what about if we wanted to do the vice versa here, where we wanted to take down, make a change here, and then pull it down to our local? So let's go and make a quick change on our remote here. And what we're going to do here is say, let's create a new function here. We'll say function, and we'll just call this function get, let's say get semester or get instructor. So we have function get instructor. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually do something a little bit different here, just to kind of, as is kind of we'll do a quick review, but we could say var get instructor. And if you remember, we talked about this thing called an arrow function. So we're going to do what we call an arrow function here. It's the same thing as kind of a name function. It's just a different syntax that we see here. And so this does the same thing here. So this is get instructor here. We just say console.log, and we just do something simple. Who is the instructor? And we'll save it. Now you'll see that we're going to use the GUI interface to run through the workflow of basically adding this and committing this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say update test.js with new function. You can add additional text, but we don't have to. This would be the same as running a git commit -m in the terminal, and this is going to commit to the master branch, and we'll just commit those changes. Now with that addition, what we've done here is we have actually made up basically our remote repository is one ahead of our local repository. So if we wanted to basically get this change reflected in our local repository, because get instructor is not going to be within this repository, right? But we want to basically pull down the latest changes of our remote repository. And one of the things you can do here, there's a command here called Git Pull. And so if we look back at our cheat sheet, which is here, there's Git Fetch, and then there's Git Pull. And so what the Git Fetch does is it fetches down all the branches from the Git remote. And then the Git Pull will fetch and merge commits from the tracking remote branch. So the one we want to use here is the Git Pull. And what we're going to do is we're going to Git Pull from the master branch. And so here, we already have that Git remote add. So we could go back to our, let's say Git Pull. Now it's not necessary that I use origin master, but I would say it's a little bit more proper to do it. And I just always got into the practice of always putting in which branch and then also the alias. So I would say Git Pull origin master. And what that's done here, you'll see that it's basically fetched the changes that were on my remote and has now updated my local repository. And you'll see that it fast forwarded 6 different alterations here. And that's essentially how I would basically push up changes to my remote, and then how I want to pull down changes to my remote. And so in the next video, we're going to go over a few more things in terms of branching and how to create remote branches and local branches. But also, we're going to go over this idea of how to essentially use this function. I'm sorry, not use this, but more so go over the git ignore and the readme file. What the use cases for why you would use those when you're working with a GitHub repository. All right.